she said. "I'm pregnant, and it's yours." I said, "I've never even kissed you." And she looked at me, her eyes wide with a desperate, terrifying certainty, and just said, "I know." The rain was tapping against the metal roof of my loft, but the silence between us was screaming. My hand still tingled where she'd pressed it to her stomach, over the soft wool of her sweater. Until that night, I was just the guy renting the garage apartment, a witness to the quiet sadness in the big house below. I was just the neighbor, but in that moment, she made me feel like something more, something forbidden. If you're watching this right now, tell me where you're from in the comments. Because I still don't know if what we did was wrong. It was 2:11 a.m., the kind of cold that seeps through your socks and settles right in the bone. I was standing barefoot on my balcony, a mug of cold coffee in my hand, watching the house below me. Most of the neighborhood was dark. It was a gated community, the kind where the hedges are trimmed with nail scissors and the silence costs extra. But down there, on the back patio of the glass house, the porch light flickered. Once, twice, 3 times. It was a signal. It wasn't meant for a husband. It wasn't meant for a lover. It was meant for me. The guy renting the loft above the garage. The guy who wasn't supposed to be watching. I should have gone inside. I should have closed the blinds and gone back to sleep. But I didn't. I stood there, waiting for the shadow to move behind the glass, thinking about how a life can change in the space of a single breath. Thinking about the night she told me the secret that would ruin us both if I ever said it out loud. It started 3 months earlier. I remember the day I pulled up to the gate. My car was 10 years old, rattling like a tin can, loaded down with 2 suitcases and a rolled-up mattress. I looked like I was delivering pizza, not moving in. Helena was waiting for me in the driveway. She was 42. I knew that because she told me later, on a night when the wine made her brave. But that first day, she just looked like money. Elegant, put together, wearing a white linen shirt that probably cost more than my car. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Her eyes looked tired. "You must be Daniel," she said. Her voice was soft, low. "I'm Helena. Welcome to the neighborhood." She gave me the tour. It was quick. The main house was all glass and sharp angles, cold and beautiful. My place was the loft above the detached garage. Separate entrance, concrete floors. "It's not much," she said, unlocking the door at the top of the narrow stairs. "We built it for a studio, but, well, we never used it. My husband thought it would be good to have someone on the property. For security." She laughed a little, a nervous sound. "And honestly, it's nice to have a younger person on the street. Maybe you can finally explain to me why the Wi-Fi never works in the kitchen." I smiled. "I can take a look." Just then, a black sedan pulled into the driveway below. A man in scrubs stepped out, phone already pressed to his ear. "That's Marcelo," she said. Her posture straightened instantly, like a soldier hearing a bugle. Marcelo was 47, a cardiologist. He had the kind of handshake that felt like a medical exam. Firm, detached, over in 2 seconds. "Good to meet you," he said, not really looking at me. He checked his watch. "Helena, did you call the landscapers? The hedges look messy." He didn't wait for an answer. He just nodded at me and walked into the house. Helena stood there for a second, watching the door close. I saw her shoulders drop, just an inch. Then she turned back to me, the perfect hostess mask sliding back into place. "Let me know if you need anything, Daniel," she said. That night, I unpacked my boxes. The loft was simple, industrial. The floor was cool, smooth concrete under my feet. It smelled faintly of dust and old paint. But when I opened the sliding door to the balcony, I smelled it. Jasmine. It was coming from her garden. a thick, sweet scent that hung heavy in the humid air. I couldn't sleep. I was 29, a freelance architect with a bank account hovering near zero, living above a rich couple's garage because the rent was cheap. I felt small. I stepped out onto the balcony around 1:30 a.m. Below me, the main house was dark, except for the back patio. Helena was sitting there. She was wearing a silk robe, her legs tucked under her on the lounge chair. She was just staring at the empty pool. The motion sensor on my balcony clicked on. A flood of light hit me. She looked up. For a second, we just stared at each other. Me, shirtless, embarrassed. Her, vulnerable, caught in a moment of private sadness. She didn't wave. She didn't smile. She just reached out and flicked a switch on the wall next to her. The patio light blinked off. She went inside. That was the first night. The routine started slowly. 2 days later, there was a knock on my door. It was morning. The sun was hitting the glass of her house so hard it hurt to look at. Helena was standing there holding a router. "I wasn't joking about the Wi-Fi," she said. She looked different in the daylight, less untouchable. She had a smudge of ink on her thumb. I went down to the main house to fix it. It was quiet inside. Too quiet. The kind of silence that rings in your ears. "Coffee?" she asked. "Sure." We stood in her kitchen while the router reset. I noticed things. I'm an architect. I noticed space. The kitchen was huge, designed for big family breakfasts, but there were only 2 stools at the island, and one of them looked like it had never been sat in. "So," she said, leaning against the counter. The click of her gold bracelet against the marble sounded loud. "What brings an architect to our quiet little fortress?" "Freelance life," I said. "Needed lower overhead. My parents are back in the interior. They want me to come home. But I'm not ready to give up on the city yet." She nodded, looking at me over the rim of her mug. "Don't go back," she said. "Not yet. You have time." She said it with a strange intensity. "What about you?" I asked. "What do you do, besides manage the Wi-Fi?" She laughed. It was a real laugh this time. "I own a gallery downtown, though lately it feels like I just manage paperwork and donors. Not much art involved." The router lights turned green. "Fixed," I said. She looked at the blinking lights, then back at me. "Thank you, Daniel. My husband, he's brilliant with hearts, but he can't work a remote control to save his life." I went back up to the loft. Later that day, I met my friend Rafa at a co-working space. I told him about the place. "Careful," Rafa said, chewing on a pen. "Rich landlord, bored wife, husband always at the hospital. I've seen this movie. Don't get a hero complex, Danny." "It's not like that," I said. "She's just nice and lonely, I think." "Lonely is dangerous," Rafa said. "Lonely is expensive." I brushed him off, but that night, around 11 p.m., I heard a voice from below. "Daniel?" I went to the balcony. She was on the patio steps, holding a cup of tea. "Did the internet break again?" I asked. "No," she said. "Just checking. You're up late." "Work," I lied. I was just scrolling my phone. "Me too," she said. "Insomnia. The house gets loud when it's this quiet." She hesitated, then looked up at me. "It's nice to see a light on up there. It makes the night feel a little shorter." I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. "Good night, Helena." "Good night." A week went by. The interactions were small, polite, but they started to add up. I'd come home and find a basket of lemons from her tree on my stairs. She'd ask me to help move a heavy painting in the living room because Marcelo is on call again. One evening, she invited me in to look at her gallery's website on the big screen. She wanted a fresh pair of eyes. We sat in the living room. The air smelled like lavender. She had a diffuser puffing away in the corner. It feels a bit cold, I said, pointing at the layout. It's very sleek, but it doesn't feel like anyone lives there. She looked at the screen, then at the room around us. Cold cells, she said softly. People like perfection. It makes them feel safe. The front door opened. We both jumped. It wasn't Marcelo. It was a woman with sharp eyes and a bob haircut. Leah, Helena said, standing up quickly. I didn't know you were coming. Clearly, the woman said. Her eyes flicked to me, then back to Helena. This is Daniel, Helena said. Our tenant. He's an architect. He was helping me with the site. Leah looked me up and down. She didn't smile. The tenant, right. Nice to meet you. I took the hint. I should get going, I said. As I closed the door, I heard Leah say, You're playing with fire, Lena. He's a kid, Leah. Don't be ridiculous. A kid. I went back to my loft. I lay on the floor, staring at the ceiling. The vents between the garage and the house were old. If you lay in the right spot, you could hear things. That night, Marcelo came home late. I heard the heavy thud of the door. Then voices. Promised you'd be here for dinner, Marcelo. I had a patient, Helena. What do you want me to do? Let them die so we can eat risotto? I want you to be here. We have the appointment on Thursday. You can't miss this one. Another appointment, he sighed. Helena, haven't we done enough? The hormones, the mood swings. Maybe it's time to stop. I can't stop, she said. Her voice cracked. I can't stop yet. Silence. Then the sound of a door closing. I lay there in the dark, feeling like an intruder, feeling the weight of her sadness pressing up through the floorboards. I went out to the balcony. She was there, sitting on the steps, barefoot. She heard me. She looked up. She wiped her face quickly, forcing a smile that broke my heart. Sorry if we were loud, she whispered. I leaned on the railing. I've heard worse. She let out a breath that was almost a laugh. Yeah, me too. We stayed like that for 20 minutes. Not talking. Just me up there and her down there, breathing the same jasmine-scented air. Saturday morning. The neighborhood was alive with the sound of leaf blowers and expensive SUVs backing out of driveways. Helena knocked on my door. I need a tall person, she said, and my husband is golfing. She needed help rearranging art in the hallway. We spent an hour moving frames, adjusting heights. She seemed lighter today. But her hands. I noticed her hands. When she pointed at the wall, her fingers had a slight tremor. Are you okay? I asked. She pulled her hand back, tucking it into her pocket. Fine. Just tired. I haven't been sleeping. The insomnia? And other things? She sighed, sitting down on the bench in the hallway. She looked at me. Really looked at me. We've been trying to have a baby for 5 years, Daniel. I froze. It was the first time she'd said it out loud to me. The treatments, they take a lot out of you, she said. And I think Marcelo is done. I think he looks at me and just sees a project that failed. He shouldn't see. You like that? I said. The words came out before I could stop them. She blinked. The air in the hallway shifted. It got thicker. Tell me about your family, she said, changing the subject quickly. Your parents. So I did. I told her about my dad's hardware store, about my mom's cooking, about how they looked at me with this mix of pride and worry because I was almost 30 and still renting a garage. She listened. She didn't check her phone. She didn't look past me. She just listened. They're lucky, she said softly, to have a son who worries about them. She stood up. Thank you, Daniel, for the help. That night I was in bed, scrolling through job listings. I saw a reflection on my wall, thin yellow stripes of light. I sat up. It was the porch light. It was shining through my blinds. I got up and looked. She wasn't outside. But the light was on. I watched it for a long time. It felt like she was leaving a candle in the window, a signal that she was awake, and she knew I was awake too. A week later, they threw a dinner party. It was a big one. Caterers, valet parking, the works. Helena came up that afternoon to warn me about the noise. She was in full hostess mode, clipboard in hand, hair perfectly sprayed. "I'm sending a plate up for you later," she said. "The catering is ridiculous. We'll never eat it all." "You don't have to do that." "I want to." She paused. "I feel safer knowing you're upstairs. In case the house gets too full." I watched the party from my balcony. It looked like a magazine spread. Women in cocktail dresses, men in suits. Marcello was in his element, holding court with a glass of wine, laughing loudly. Helena was moving through the crowd like a ghost. She smiled. She touched arms. She filled glasses. But every time she turned away from someone, her face went blank. I saw Donna Silvia, the neighborhood gossip, corner Marcello at the door. I could just hear her voice over the music. "So lucky, Marcello, and maybe a little one soon, yes? You two have the perfect nest for it." I saw Marcello's jaw tighten. He said something short, patted Donna Silvia's shoulder, and walked away. Helena saw it too. She stood by the buffet table, gripping the edge so hard her knuckles were white. Then she looked up. Right at my balcony. I was standing in the shadows. I don't know if she could see me, but she held her gaze there for a long, long second. Then she turned back to the party. Around midnight, the cars started leaving. I stepped out for air. The house was quiet now. I saw Marcello come out the back door. He was still in his suit, but his tie was undone. He kissed Helena on the cheek. It looked like he was kissing an ant. "I have to go in," he said. "Emergency consult." "Now?" Helena asked. "Marcello, the guests just left." "It's the job, Helena. You know that." He got in his car. He drove away. Helena stood in the driveway. She watched his taillights disappear. Then she turned and walked back toward the house. But she didn't go inside. She walked around to the back patio. Click. The porch light went on. 10 minutes later, I heard a sound on my stairs. I opened the door before she could knock. She was standing there. She was still wearing her party dress, a long navy silk thing that shimmered in the gloom. But she was barefoot. She was holding 2 mugs of coffee. "I couldn't sleep," she said. Her voice was trembling. "And I made too much coffee." "Come in," I said. She stepped into the loft. It was messy. I had drawings on the floor, clothes on the chair. "Sorry about the mess," I said. "It's real," she said. "I like it. It looks like someone actually lives here." She sat on my cheap IKEA couch like it was a throne. She tucked her legs under her. "I felt like a prop tonight," she whispered. "Just a piece of furniture in my own house." "You were the best part of the party," I said. "I watched from up here." She looked at me over her mug. "You watched?" "Yeah." She put the mug down. Her hands were shaking again. "My period is late," she said. The air left the room. "Helena?" She waved a hand, dismissive. "It's nothing. Stress, age, my body playing tricks on me again. It happens all the time." "But what if it's not?" "Marcello says he's done," she said, staring at the concrete floor. "He says he doesn't want to hope anymore. He didn't even ask me about the cycle this month." She looked so small. "I'm sorry," I said. "Don't be." She leaned her head back against the wall. "It's nice here, Daniel. It's quiet. You don't ask me for anything." We talked for hours. About nothing. About music. About the way the light hits the trees in the morning. Around 3 a.m., she stopped answering. I looked over. She was asleep. Sitting up, head tipped back, breathing softly. I didn't wake her. I didn't touch her. I got a blanket from my bed and gently, so gently, laid it over her. The smell of her perfume, jasmine and something citrusy, filled the small room. I slept on the mattress on the floor. When I woke up, the sun was gray in the window. The couch was empty. The blanket was folded neatly on the armrest. The coffee mug was washed and sitting in the sink. I looked out the window. The porch light was off. The next few days were strange. We avoided each other. I saw her at the mailbox. She gave me a tight, polite nod, like I was a stranger, like she hadn't slept on my couch 3 nights ago. I stayed late at the co-working space. Rafa asked me what was wrong. Nothing, I said. Just neighbor stuff. You look like you're haunting a graveyard, man, Rafa said. Snap out of it. But I couldn't. I kept thinking about her breathing in the dark. 3 nights after the party, I was sitting at my drafting table. It was raining, a slow, steady drizzle. I saw the porch light flicker, on, off, on, off. Then it stayed on. I waited. My heart was hammering against my ribs. 5 minutes later, a knock. I opened the door. Helena was standing there. She wasn't wearing the silk dress. She was wearing an oversized gray sweater that swallowed her hands, and leggings. No makeup. Her hair was damp from the rain. She looked terrified. She was holding a small plastic bag. "Can I come in?" she whispered. I stepped back. She walked to the middle of the room and stopped. She was shaking, violently. "Helena?" She reached into the bag. She pulled out a white stick, a pregnancy test. She put it on my table. 2 pink lines. I stared at it. The world tilted on its axis. "You're—" I started. She didn't answer. She walked up to me. She was so close I could feel the heat coming off her skin. She reached out and took my hand. Her fingers were ice cold. She guided my hand to her stomach. She pressed my palm against the soft wool of her sweater, right over her womb. She pressed hard. She looked up at me. Her eyes were wide, dark, and filled with a desperate, terrifying certainty. "I'm pregnant," she whispered, "and it's yours." I stopped breathing. I pulled my hand back like I'd been burned. "What?" I choked out. "Helena, I've never even kissed you." She didn't blink. She didn't look away. "I know," she said. Silence. The kind of silence that screams. The rain tapped against the metal roof of the loft. "Helena," I said, my voice shaking. "You can't say that. Biologically, it's Marcelo's. It has to be." She sat down on the chair, heavily. "Biologically?" "Yes. It was the last IVF cycle. The one he didn't even want to do. The one I did alone." She looked at her hands. "But I didn't do it for him, Daniel. I did it because of you." "Me?" "Because when I came home to that empty house, seeing your light on upstairs made me feel like I wasn't alone," she said. "Because you made me tea. Because you listened. Because you looked at me like I was a person, not a patient." She looked up at me again. "I talked to you in my head every night, when the injections hurt, when I was scared. I wasn't thinking of him. I was thinking of you. So don't tell me it's not yours." "That's not how it works," I said, but my voice was weak. "It's how it feels," she said fiercely. "And feelings matter more right now." She stood up. She paced the small room. "We have to have rules," she said. She was suddenly practical, manic. "If we're going to do this." "Do what?" "Survive this," she said. "Marcelo can never know, obviously." "Obviously," I repeated. I felt like I was in a dream. "Rule 1, she said, holding up a finger. "No touching, not even like neighbor touching. No hands on arms, no hugs." "Okay." Rule 2. No texting after midnight. If he sees my phone light up, he'll ask. Okay. Rule 3, she said, her voice dropping. You don't come to the appointments. You don't come into the bedroom. You stay here. You stay the neighbor. Helena, I said. I am the neighbor. She looked at me then. A look so full of longing it knocked the wind out of me. We both know that's not true anymore, she whispered. She moved toward the door. She paused with her hand on the latch. I'm keeping it, she said. Because of you. Then she left. I stood there for a long time, staring at the door. My hand still tingled where she had pressed it against her stomach. The next morning, the sun came up like nothing had happened. I went downstairs to get the mail. Helena was in the driveway, getting into her car. Marcelo's car was there too. She looked at me. Just for a second. A tiny, almost invisible nod. Then Donna Silvia walked by with her little dog. Good morning, she chirped. Oh, look at you two. The lovely young tenant and the lady of the house, always up so early. She leaned in, lowering her voice. I heard shouting last night. Everything okay? My blood ran cold. Helena smiled. It was the perfect porcelain smile. Just the TV, Silvia, Helena said smoothly. Marcelo likes his action movies loud. Donna Silvia laughed. Men and their noise. She walked on. Helena looked at me one last time. Her eyes said everything. Be careful. She got in her car and drove away. I went back upstairs to the empty loft. I looked at the pregnancy test she had left on my table. I picked it up. I should have thrown it away. I should have moved out that day. Instead, I put it in the bottom of my drawer, under my socks, and I waited for the porch light to blink. Over the next week, the silence between our floors was heavy. It had weight. We stuck to the rules. Or we tried to. I stopped sitting on the balcony when I knew she was downstairs. She stopped lingering in the driveway. When we passed each other near the mailboxes, we offered tight, polite smiles. The kind you give a stranger. But the house didn't care about our rules. The walls were too thin. The vents were too open. I could hear her pacing at 2 a.m. I could hear the faint click, click, click of her bracelet against her laptop as she worked late in the living room. I could smell the lavender from her diffuser drifting up through the floorboards, filling my small concrete loft. It was torture. I went to the co-working space every day just to get away from the sound of her life. Rafa noticed. He was leaning back in his chair, spinning a pen. You look like hell, man, he said. Thanks. Is it the work? Or the landlady? I didn't look up from my laptop. There's no landlady issue, Rafa. I'm just busy. Right, he said. He stopped spinning the pen. Just remember, don't be a hero. Bored rich women love a project. Don't become the project. I laughed it off, but his words sat in my stomach like a stone. That night, my phone buzzed at 11:45 p.m. Does the baby's room need soundproofing? You're the architect. It was a practical question. Safe, within the rules. I started typing a reply about insulation and drywall. I saw the 3 dots appear, showing she was typing too. Then the dots disappeared. A minute later, a new message came through. Ignore me. Long day. Go to sleep. I erased my draft. I didn't reply. I sat in the dark, staring at the screen, wishing she had sent whatever she deleted. Saturday came, the day of the pregnancy orientation class. Helena had mentioned it 3 times in passing. She was nervous. She wanted Marcelo to understand the schedule, the diet, the changes. I was on my balcony with my coffee, staying back in the shadows. I saw the front door open. Helena stepped out. She looked beautiful, but fragile. She was wearing a soft cream dress that hid the small bump, holding a folder against her chest like a shield. She stood by the car, checking her watch. Then the door opened again. Marcelo came out. He was in scrubs. He had his phone to his ear. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw the body language. He held up a hand. Stop. Wait. He kissed her cheek quickly, without looking at her eyes. He pointed at his pager. Then he got in his sleek black sedan and drove away. Helena stood there in the driveway. The morning sun was bright, but she looked cold. She didn't look up at my balcony. She just called a taxi. I watched her get in and ride away alone. I felt a flash of anger so hot it made my hands shake. He was her husband. This was the miracle baby, and he was leaving her on the curb. When she came back 4 hours later, she looked exhausted. She was carrying the folder and a cheap plastic goodie bag with a diaper brand logo on it. I waited until evening. I was taking out the trash, an excuse. She was sitting on the front steps. The folder was open on her lap. Hey, I said. She jumped a little. Then she smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. Hey, neighbor. How was the class? Informative, she said. She tapped a paper full of diagrams. Terrifying. Apparently there are 1,000 things that can go wrong. She looked at the paper, squinting. I don't understand half of this. The structural stuff, the nursery layout, requirements. I can help, I said. The words were out before I could stop them. I'm good with plans, remember? She hesitated. Then she moved over on the step. We sat there for an hour as the sun went down. I explained the diagrams. I showed her where the crib should go for the best airflow. Her hand was on the paper. Mine was next to it. We were inches apart. I could smell that citrus and jasmine perfume. When we finished, she folded the paper. Marcelo had an emergency, she said quietly. Defending him, or maybe convincing herself. I know, I said. She looked at me. The air between us felt charged. Electric. Next time, she whispered. I don't want to sit in those waiting rooms alone, Daniel. Everyone else had someone. Tell me when, I said. She nodded. Okay. 3 days later, I was in her car. I felt like a criminal. We were driving to the clinic for the first major ultrasound. Marcelo couldn't get out of a surgery. That's what he said. Helena drove. She was gripping the steering wheel so hard her knuckles were white. You don't have to do this, she said. I want to. It's weird, isn't it? You sitting there. It's just a ride, Helena. But it wasn't just a ride. The waiting room was full of couples. Husbands holding purses, wives rubbing bellies. We sat in 2 chairs near the corner. I kept my hands in my lap. When the nurse called her name, she stood up. She looked at me. Panic. I stood up too. We walked into the dark room. It smelled like antiseptic and lavender gel. The technician was a cheerful woman who didn't ask questions. She assumed. Dad, you can sit right there by the screen, she said. I opened my mouth to correct her. Helena spoke first. Thanks, she said. I sat. The room went dark. The only light was the glow of the monitor. Helena lay back. She pulled her shirt up. I looked away, staring at the floor, trying to be respectful, trying to be the neighbor. Then the sound filled the room. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. It sounded like an underwater drum. Fast, strong. I looked at the screen. A grainy gray shape. A tiny pulse. There's the heartbeat, the tech said. Strong and steady. I felt a hand grab mine. Helena reached out blindly in the dark and squeezed my hand. Hard. Her fingers dug into my palm. It was desperate. I looked at her face. She was crying. Silent tears running into her ears. She wasn't looking at the screen. She was looking at me. Do you hear that? She whispered. Her voice cracked. Daniel, do you hear that? I hear it, I whispered back. That's what you kept me from giving up on, she said. She squeezed my hand tighter until I lost feeling in my fingers. I didn't pull away. I anchored her. For 5 minutes in that dark room, we were a family. It was a lie, but it was the most real thing I had ever felt. We didn't talk on the drive back. We sat in the driveway for a long time. The engine ticked as it cooled. Helena was holding the ultrasound printout. She handed it to me. Look at the nose, she said. It's tiny. I traced the gray smudge on the glossy paper. Thank you, she said, for being there when it could have been no one. We got out of the car. I felt heavy, drained. Then I heard the bark. Donna Silvia was walking her terrier. She stopped right in front of the gate. She looked at Helena, then at me, then at the car. Well, hello, she called out. Her eyes were sharp. Back from an outing? Just an appointment, Helena said quickly. Oh? Is Marcello's car in the shop? Silvia asked. She knew exactly whose car was where. Daniel gave me a lift, Helena said. Marcello is working. Such a gentleman, Silvia said. She looked at me, a smile that wasn't quite a smile. It's good you have help. She walked on. I felt a cold prickle on the back of my neck. She's going to talk, I said. Let her talk, Helena said, but she clicked her bracelet against her phone. Click, click, click. That weekend, Marcello threw a barbecue. To celebrate the news, he said. He invited the whole street. He invited me. It would be rude not to come, Helena texted me. Please come. I went. I stood by the cooler, drinking a cheap beer, watching Marcello play the perfect host. He was charming. He laughed loudly. He put his hand on Helena's back, claiming her. But I saw the way Helena drifted. She kept ending up on my side of the patio. Not talking to me, just near, like a magnet. Leah was there. She cornered me by the salad table. You're a nice guy, Daniel, she said. She wasn't smiling. Thanks, Leah. Don't be too nice, people notice. She nodded toward Helena, then back to me. A warning. As the party wound down, I was helping clear some plates. Marcello stopped me near the grill. The coals were dying out, smelling of smoke and ash. Helena tells me you went to the clinic with her, he said. His voice was casual. Too casual. She needed a ride, I said. I was heading that way. A lie. He knew it. He took a sip of his wine. He looked at me, up and down. You know, he said, she hates going alone. I try to make it, but the hospital... Well, you know, important work. Of course, I said. So did she rope you into the room too? He asked. Or did you wait in the lobby? He was testing me. I just drove her, sir, I lied. He smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. You're very helpful, Daniel. We appreciate it. Just remember, we'll need the loft back eventually. For the nanny. He patted my shoulder. It felt like a threat. Enjoy the beer, he said, and walked away. The weeks blurred. Helena was showing now. A real bump. Marcello was gone more than ever. Conferences, late surgeries, research dinners. I stopped fighting it. I stopped going to the co-working space. I started building the nursery. It started with a crib. Helena bought it online, some complicated Scandinavian thing with 1,000 screws. He said he'd do it, she told me, standing in the doorway of the spare room. That was 2 weeks ago. I've got tools, I said. It became our routine. I would come down when Marcello's car was gone. We would work on the room. I assembled the crib. I hung the shelves. I painted one wall a soft, dusty green because Helena said yellow was cliché. We talked. God, we talked. About everything. About my fear of never making it as an architect. About her fear that she wouldn't love the baby enough because she was so tired. You're going to be a great mom, I told her one afternoon. I was on the floor, screwing in a baseboard. She looked at me. She was sitting in the rocking chair I had just built. "How do you know?" "Because you're already doing everything for her," I said. She smiled. A real smile. Soft. We had tea on the back steps at night. The jasmine was blooming now. The scent was thick in the air. We never touched. That was the rule. But we shared music. She sent me songs. I sent her playlists. One night, late, I was on my balcony. She was on the patio below. "Daniel?" she called up softly. "Yeah?" "Come down. Please?" Her voice was urgent. I ran down the stairs. I thought something was wrong. She was standing in the shadows of the porch light. Her eyes were wide. "She's moving," she whispered. "Really moving. Not just flutters." She looked at me. She didn't think. She just reached out, took my hand, and pulled it toward her stomach. The fabric of her dress was soft. Her belly was warm and firm. I held my breath. Then I felt it. A distinct, sharp thump against my palm. Helena laughed, a wet, teary sound. "Did you feel that?" "Yeah," I whispered. "I felt it." She looked up at me. Her face was illuminated by the yellow porch light. "She recognizes you," she said. The words hung in the air. Heavy. Dangerous. She froze. She realized what she had said. She pulled back. I dropped my hand. We stood there, staring at each other. The silence was screaming. "Good night, Daniel," she said. Her voice was shaking. She went inside and locked the door. I stood in the dark, my hand still burning. The crash came 3 days later. I was in the nursery again, fixing a bookshelf that was slightly crooked. Helena was folding tiny clothes on the changing table. We were laughing about baby names. "Clara is nice," I said. "Marcelo likes Isabella. Every girl is named Isabella. Clara is better. It means light." "Maybe," she said. She looked happy. Then we heard it, the heavy thud of a car door. It was 4 p.m. Marcelo never came home at 4 p.m. Helena's face went pale. "He's early," she whispered. We heard the front door open. Footsteps, heavy, fast. "Helena?" He walked into the nursery. He was still in his suit. He stopped when he saw me. I was holding a level and a screwdriver. I looked like I belonged there. That was the problem. "Oh," Marcelo said. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. "Daniel, again." "He's just finishing the shelf," Helena said quickly. Her voice was too high. "It was wobbly. I was worried it would fall on the baby." Marcelo looked at the shelf, then at me. "I didn't realize we had hired a contractor," he said. "I'm just helping out," I said. I started packing my tools. My heart was hammering. "Right," Marcelo said. "Helping." He walked over to Helena and kissed her. It was possessive. He looked right at me while he did it. "I'll get out of your hair," I said. I left. I walked up the external stairs to my loft. My hands were sweating. Through the vents, I heard it start. It wasn't shouting. It was worse. It was the low, murmured tone of a serious fight. I lay on my floor, listening. I couldn't help it. "He's always here, Helena." "He's helping me, Marcelo. You're never here." "It looks bad. Do you know what Sylvia said to me? She asked if I was moving out. Sylvia is an old bat. It stops. Now, I don't want him in the house when I'm not here." The argument went on for an hour, then silence. I didn't sleep that night. 2 days later, it rained. A heavy, tropical storm that hammered against the glass. I came home from a meeting with Rafa. A fake meeting, really. Just an excuse to leave the house. I walked up the stairs. The lights were on in their living room. The rain drowned out a lot, but the vents carried the voices clearly. They were shouting now. I stopped in the middle of my living room, dripping wet. He's obsessed with you, Helena. Can't you see that? Marcello's voice, angry. He is not obsessed. He looks at you like you're his wife. It's embarrassing. He's just a kid, Marcello. I froze. He's lonely, Helena shouted. Her voice was desperate. He's broke. He's alone in that loft, and he's young. He attaches to people. I just felt sorry for him. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Sorry for him. He reads into things, she continued. I'm just being nice because he has no one else. That's it. He's just a neighbor. She was throwing me away, to save herself, to save the marriage. I knew why she was doing it. I knew she had to. But hearing it, hearing her reduce everything we had, the ultrasound, the hand on the stomach, the late nights, to pity? It broke something inside me. Fine, Marcello said. Then prove it. Create some distance. We need that space back soon anyway. I will, she said. Her voice was quiet now, defeated. I will. I sat on my couch. I didn't turn on the lights. An hour later, my phone buzzed. I'm sorry. Don't answer this. I looked at the message. I didn't answer. The next morning, Marcello knocked on my door. He was dressed for work. Perfect suit. Perfect hair. Daniel, he said. He wasn't smiling. Marcello? Look, we've been talking. With the baby coming, things are going to get chaotic. We're going to need the loft back, for family coming to visit. Maybe a night nurse. He paused. We'll give you 2 months. Legally, we only have to give you 30 days. But we want to be fair. It's fine, I said. My voice sounded dead. I understand. It's nothing personal, he said. You've been helpful, but we need our privacy back. I'll start packing, I said. He nodded once, turned, and walked down the stairs. I looked out the window. Helena was standing in the upstairs hallway window of the main house. She was watching. She saw me looking. She didn't wave. She just placed a hand on the glass, then turned away. The next month was a ghost story. I lived above them, but I didn't exist. I stopped using the backyard. I parked my car on the street so I wouldn't cross paths with them in the driveway. When I saw Helena, she looked down. No more texts, no more tea. The nursery was finished, but I never saw the inside of it again. Rafa helped me find a new place, a small studio across town. Better this way, he said, helping me tape up a box. Clean break. Yeah, I said. You got too close, man. I know. One Saturday, the street filled with cars. Pink balloons were tied to the mailbox. A baby shower. I sat in my empty loft, listening to the laughter drifting up. I heard glasses clinking. I heard women cooing over gifts. I heard Donna Silvia's shrill laugh. I wasn't invited. Of course I wasn't. I imagined Helena down there, smiling that porcelain smile, pretending everything was perfect. I wondered if she felt the baby kick. I wondered if she thought of my hand. When evening came, the cars left. The street went quiet. I stepped onto my balcony. Just for a second. Helena was on the patio below. She was popping the pink balloons one by one. Pop! 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 She looked angry. She stopped. She looked up. She knew I was there. The porch light was off. It was just darkness between us. She looked at me for a long beat. Then she turned around, slid the glass door shut, and pulled the curtains. I went back inside and taped up the last box. I was leaving. But I knew, with a sick feeling in my stomach, that I wasn't really going anywhere. End of Act 2. The weeks that followed were a slow suffocation. My lease had an expiration date now, and the countdown was ticking on the wall. Every day I woke up, looked at the concrete ceiling, and remembered that soon I wouldn't be waking up here. I started living like a ghost. I learned the rhythm of the house below not to be part of it, but to avoid it. If I heard the garage door open, I waited 20 minutes before going down to check my mail. If I heard Helena in the backyard, I stayed away from the balcony. I started sketching again. Not for clients, for myself. I drew floor plans of houses that didn't exist, houses with thick walls, houses where the kitchen wasn't visible from the street, houses where people actually talked to each other instead of performing for the neighbors. My mother called. She asked when I was coming home. "Soon," I told her, "just tying up loose ends." But the ends didn't feel loose. They felt knotted around my throat. One afternoon, coming back from a meeting I didn't care about, I saw Helena in the driveway. She was struggling with 3 heavy grocery bags. She was 8 months pregnant now, her movements slow, her hand pressed to the small of her back. Instinct took over. I killed the engine and was halfway out of the car before I remembered the rules. I stopped. My foot hovered over the pavement. Before I could decide, the front door of the main house opened. Marcelo stepped out. He was on his phone, as always, but he slid it into his pocket when he saw her. He walked down the driveway, took the bags from her hands effortlessly, and kissed her forehead. It was a practiced motion. Efficient. Helena didn't lean into him. She just let him take the weight. I pulled my leg back into the car and closed the door. I waited until they were inside, the heavy wood door clicking shut before I walked up the stairs to my empty loft. 3 weeks before I was supposed to leave, the sky turned green. It was one of those summer storms that builds for days. The air so heavy, you have to chew it before you swallow. I was working by the light of my laptop. The power had flickered twice already. Downstairs, the voices were louder than usual. The humidity carried sound differently. "I can't control the schedule, Helena," Marcelo was saying. His voice was tight. "If I get called in, I get called in." "I just don't want to be alone," she said. Her voice cracked. "Not like last time." "You won't be alone. You have Leah. You have the doula." "I want my husband." I put my headphones on. I couldn't listen to it. I turned the music up until my ears rang, staring at the rain lashing against the sliding glass door. Around midnight, the power finally gave up. The loft plunged into darkness. I took the headphones off. The silence was heavy. Then the sirens started. They were distant at first, then screaming down the street. I stood up, my heart hammering a rhythm I couldn't control. I walked to the balcony and slid the door open. The rain was torrential. It soaked my shirt in seconds. An ambulance had pulled up to the curb, its lights flashing red and blue against the wet pavement. The front door opened. Marcelo came out first, holding an umbrella that was useless in the wind. Then Helena. She was doubled over. She wasn't walking, she was shuffling. Every few steps she stopped, gripping Marcelo's arm, her face buried in his shoulder. I gripped the cold metal railing of the balcony. My knuckles turned white. I wanted to run down there. I wanted to be the one holding the umbrella. I wanted to tell her to breathe. But I was just the tenant. I was just the guy upstairs. Neighbors were watching from their windows. I saw a curtain twitch at Dona Silvia's house. They got her into the back of the ambulance. Leah's car pulled up a second later, screeching to a halt. She jumped out and climbed in with Helena. Marcelo ran to his car, following the ambulance as it pulled away. The sirens faded. The red and blue lights stopped reflecting in the gallery windows. The street went dark again. I stood there in the rain for a long time. I was shivering, but I didn't feel cold. "Good luck," I whispered to the empty driveway. The porch light below had been left on in the panic. It was the only light on the street. The house was quiet for 3 days. It was a different kind of silence. It wasn't the silence of people avoiding each other. It was the silence of a held breath. I packed. I taped up the books. I wrapped the few mugs I owned in newspaper. I took down the sketches from the wall. Marcelo came back once to grab a bag. He looked like he hadn't slept in 40 hours. His shirt was wrinkled. He saw me in the driveway. "She's fine," he said before I could ask. "Baby is fine. A girl." "Congratulations," I said. He nodded, distracted, and got back in his car. He didn't ask how the packing was going. He didn't care. On the 4th day, they came home. I watched from behind my blinds. Marcelo drove slowly. He got out, walked around the car, and opened the back door with a tenderness I hadn't seen in him before. He lifted the car seat out. Helena got out slowly. She looked fragile, pale. She was wearing a loose dress, moving like her body didn't belong to her anymore. They walked up the path. The door closed. That night, I lay on my mattress on the floor. The bed frame was already dismantled. The sound drifted up through the floorboards. It was a soft, thin cry, high-pitched. I lay there in the dark, listening. I learned that cry. Over the next 2 nights, I learned the difference between the hunger cry, short, rhythmic bursts, and the tired cry, which was more of a whimper. I knew when Helena was walking the floor. I could hear the creak of the floorboard near the nursery window. I was living their life with them, separated by 12 inches of concrete. The porch light stayed off. She didn't need to signal her insomnia anymore. She wasn't awake because she was lonely. She was awake because she was a mother. A week later, I ran into Leah at the gate. I was carrying a box of winter clothes to my car. Leah was carrying a casserole dish covered in foil. She stopped. She looked at the box in my hands. "You're really going," she said. It wasn't a question. "Lisa's up," I said. She nodded. She looked at me, really looked at me, with those sharp, knowing eyes. "She's okay, Daniel," Leah said quietly. "She's exhausted, she's terrified, but she's happy." "Good," I said. "That's good." Leah shifted the dish to her other hip. "She talked about you, in the beginning, when things were bad." My chest tightened. "Leah—" "I know," she interrupted. "It's not my business. I thought you should know. You weren't just a tenant to her." She didn't wait for me to answer. She walked past me, punched the code into the keypad, and went inside. That evening I stood on the balcony one last time. The curtains in the living room were open. I could see the glow of a lamp. Helena was sitting on the couch. The baby was asleep on her chest, a tiny bundle of white blanket. Helena's head was tipped back, eyes closed. She looked peaceful. I stepped back inside and slid the glass door shut. I locked it. My last night in the loft. The space was hollow. It echoed when I walked. I couldn't sleep. My back hurt from the hard floor, but it wasn't that. It was the finality of it. I sat against the wall where Helena had slept that one night. I closed my eyes and tried to remember the smell of her jasmine perfume, but the smell of dust and cardboard was too strong. I checked my phone. 2:06 a.m. I should sleep. I had a long drive tomorrow. At 2:07 a.m., my phone buzzed. The screen lit up the dark room. It was a number I didn't have saved, but I knew it. I had memorized it from the lease agreement months ago. I opened the message. It was a photo, a black and white close-up of a newborn's hand. Tiny wrinkled fingers wrapped around a thumb. Helena's thumb. I recognized the gold bracelet. Below the photo, 3 words. Meet Clara Daniela. I stopped breathing. Daniela. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. She had named the baby after me. Not the first name. That belonged to the world, to Marcelo. But the middle name. The secret name. The name that meant, I see you. I stood up. My legs felt shaky. I walked out onto the balcony. The air was cool. I looked down. The porch light clicked on. Then it blinked. Once. Twice. 3 times. I didn't think, I just moved. I walked down the narrow metal stairs, my bare feet making no sound. I crossed the small patch of grass. The dew was cold. Helena was standing on the patio. She was wearing a worn gray robe, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. She looked tired. Bone-deep tired, but her eyes were clear. She was holding the baby. I stopped at the edge of the concrete. I didn't cross the line. "Hi," she whispered. "Hi," I said. My voice was rough. She looked down at the bundle in her arms. She shifted the blanket slightly so I could see the face. She was sleeping. A tiny, perfect thing. Dark hair. "Clara," I said. "And Daniela," Helena whispered. She looked up at me. "Marcelo liked Clara. He said it sounded bright." "And the middle name?" "He thinks it's for my grandmother." She smiled, a sad, small curve of her lips. "It's for the person who kept me from giving up," she said. "When it would have been easier to just stop trying." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Helena, I know you're leaving tomorrow," she said quickly. "I know you have to. It's right. I don't want to go." "I know." She stepped a little closer. The scent of jasmine hit me then, mixed with the smell of milk and baby powder. "But you can't stay here, Daniel. We both know that." She was right. We had run out of road. She looked at me, her eyes searching my face, memorizing it. "I just wanted you to see her," she said. "Once. She's beautiful." Helena shifted her weight. She stepped right up to the line I hadn't crossed. We were inches apart. She didn't offer me the baby. She didn't try to kiss me. Instead, she leaned forward and rested her forehead against mine. I closed my eyes. Her skin was warm. I could feel her breath. I could feel the heat of the baby between us. A small, beating heart that wasn't mine, but wouldn't exist without me. We stood like that for a long time. No words. Just the sound of the wind in the trees and the steady rhythm of 3 hearts standing in the dark. It was more intimate than any kiss I had ever had. It was a goodbye, and a thank you, and an apology. She pulled back slowly. Her eyes were wet. "Good night, Daniel," she whispered. "Good night, Helena." She turned and walked back into the house. The glass door slid shut. The lock clicked. I stood there until the porch light went out. The next morning was bright and loud. The movers I'd hired, 2 guys with a van, were efficient. They cleared the loft in 40 minutes. I swept the floor one last time. Marcelo met me in the driveway to get the keys. He was in a good mood. He shook my hand, firmly. "Thanks for everything, Daniel," he said. "Good luck with the new place." "Thanks," I said. "Good luck with everything." "Oh, we'll be fine. Tired, but fine." He laughed, a satisfied, successful laugh. He didn't know. He would never know. I walked to my car. Rafa was there, leaning against the hood, waiting to follow me to the new apartment. "Ready?" Rafa asked. "Yeah," I said. I opened the car door, but before I got in, I looked up. Through the big glass window of the living room, I saw her. Helena was walking past the window, rocking the baby. She paused. Just for a second. She looked out at the driveway. She didn't wave. She didn't smile. She just stood there holding the baby tight. I got into the car, I started the engine. I drove through the gate, and I didn't look in the rearview mirror. 6 months later, I was back in the city to visit my parents. I told myself I was taking the shortcut to the highway. But that was a lie. I turned down the street. It looked exactly the same. The hedges were trimmed, the lawns were manicured. It was a perfect, quiet Sunday. I slowed the car as I approached the house. There were toys on the front lawn now, a bright yellow plastic slide, a stroller parked by the front door. I pulled over across the street, behind the shade of a large oak tree. I killed the engine. I watched. Through the glass front of the house I could see them. Marcelo was sitting on the rug, reading a newspaper. Helena was walking through the room. She was holding Clara, bigger now, sitting up on her hip. Helena laughed at something Marcelo said. It looked real. They were a family. A perfect, complete picture. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even sad, really. I just felt quiet. I realized then that I was never the main character in her story. I was a plot twist. I was the chapter that happened in the dark so the rest of the book could be written. I reached for the key to start the car. Then I saw it. The porch light. It was the middle of the day, but the bulb under the awning flickered. Click, on. Click, off. Click, on. 3 slow, deliberate blinks. I froze. Helena wasn't at the window. She hadn't looked out. She was still in the living room, her back to the street, bouncing the baby. Maybe she knew I was there. Maybe she felt it. Or maybe she just did it sometimes. Maybe on quiet Sundays, she walked past the switch and signaled to a ghost, just to remember that she wasn't alone. I smiled. Some bonds you never name, some doors you never open. Yet somehow, you still find yourself standing on the porch, watching the light blink 3 times in the dark. I started the car and drove away. If someone told you, it's yours, even when it couldn't be, would you walk away or quietly stay?